engaged in governing. A bust of Vice President Cheney now rests in the Senate wing of the Capitol. It marks not only the office he held, it memorializes the values that he lived. A son of Wyoming, a defender of freedom, an American original. We remember Dick Cheney as he lived, steady in purpose, firm in conviction, loyal to his country, and unafraid to do what he believed was right. My prayers are with Lynn, with Liz and Mary, with their grandchildren, as they celebrate the life of an incredible man. May he rest in peace. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Regret whip.
We got a quorum call?
No.
No?
No.
Thank you. Mr. President, election night this past Tuesday should have been a wake-up call for many of my colleagues in the Senate. Americans lined up at the ballot box to demand the Trump administration start addressing America's affordability crisis. These voters want to go to the grocery store or doctor's office without breaking the bank. But the president, I'm not sure, is even listening. Despite President Trump's promise to bring prices down on day one of his administration, Americans have been paying more for their groceries, electricity, and rent throughout this first year of his second term. And in 2026, they'll be paying far more when it comes to health care. You see, President Trump said on the campaign trail that he had, quote, concepts of a plan, close quote, concepts of a plan to make health care affordable. His real plan, and the Republicans plan it for, they've been following for the past year, unfortunately is going to mean Americans pay dramatically more for their health care. In July, congressional Republicans passed it, you remember the name, the Big Beautiful Bill, President Trump's budget bill. It cut Medicaid by $1 trillion, and it's going to result in more than 10 million people losing their health insurance. Those cuts were not enough. As they unilaterally wrote and passed the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, congressional Republicans also refused to extend the Affordable Care Act's enhanced premium tax credits. What is an enhanced tax credit? It means that you receive help from the government to pay your premiums for health insurance. These tax credits help more than 20 million people in America afford health care, and President Trump and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are choosing to let these credits expire at the end of this year. Last week, people in my state of Illinois started receiving letters informing them of what's in store if we don't do something about this Republican action. They're going to find out through the mail what's going to happen to next year's health insurance premiums. They won't like it. And for those in my state who access health care through the ACA, these letters inform them their premiums will increase by an average of 80% or an additional $2,500 per year. $2,500, folks. How's that on your family budget? I know what it is. It's a killer for a lot of people. But for many others, those premium increases will even be higher, doubling and tripling what people are actually paying today. Folks don't realize this. They will soon when they receive these letters. That's what they're in for. What does it mean for many families in my state? Devastation. I want to read some of the messages I've been receiving from constituents across Illinois now that they see what happens to their hospitalization premiums because of this Republican action. Todd is in Petersburg, Illinois, which is a small town in the middle of the state. He wrote to my office and he said, quote, in 2025, I had a good plan, which was around $560 a month for health insurance. Sadly, my option now has a monthly premium of $1,400, almost triple what he's paying now. Scott from Glen Ellen, a suburb of Chicago, wrote, and I quote him, my daughter just received her 2026 premium notice. Without any help, her costs will increase from $232 a month to $788, triple what she's currently paying. Phyllis from DuPage County wrote, I lost my job and I've been on the ACA Marketplace plan. Last year, my plan with dental and vision cost me $162 a month. This year, without a subsidy, prices are going up to $1,136, from $162 to $1,136 a month, with a higher deductible, more copays, and no vision or dental coverage. She concluded, this amount they're asking for my health insurance is more than my monthly mortgage. It's not affordable living in this country anymore. If Republicans don't come to the negotiating table, Scott's daughter will see a $6,600 premium increase, Todd will face a premium increase of $10,000 plus, and Phyllis will pay $12,000 more for her health care. What family can handle that? These are real stories from real families, real results of action that's been taken in the Senate. People are going to pay thousands of dollars more for their health insurance, and some will drop it. The Director of Insurance in Illinois estimates that 30 to 40% of the 500,000 people who are under the Affordable Care Act in Illinois will drop their coverage. Will they get sick in the future? Sure they will. Will they show up at the hospital even if they have no insurance? Of course they will. Will the hospital treat them? Yes. Who will pay for that treatment? All the rest of us, because of this Republican action eliminating this tax credit. So what has President Trump been doing as my constituents receive these awful notices? In the last month, he launched a $40 billion bailout for Argentina. $40 billion. We didn't vote for $40 billion. He just announced it. He started construction on a grand new ballroom for his billionaire buddies at the White House, insisting it won't cost the taxpayers any money at all. And he bought 2 new private jets for Kristi Noem, the Secretary of DHS. And last week, he threw himself a lavish Great Gatsby-themed Halloween party at Mar-a-Lago. Voters are fed up, and they showed it last Tuesday. As a president lives like a king, Americans are rejecting Republicans who show more interest in fawning over the president than lowering the cost of living. There'll be more election Tuesdays like this one if President Trump and the congressional Republicans continue to refuse to sit down with Democrats and find a way out of this shutdown. We should be meeting today to open this government. We need to address this health insurance problem. It affects every district. In fact, it affects red states, those who President Trump carried more than blue states. It's a national problem created by the Republicans and needs to be fixed by them. They've got to join us in this effort. There is no reason we can't find a deal and stop millions of Americans from paying double or triple in health insurance premiums, because the American people deserve so much more than mere concepts of a plan when it comes to health care. I yield the floor.
Mr. President,
Senator from Florida.
today is day 37 of the longest ever government shutdown. And American families and American workers are paying the price for Democrats to put on a show. From poetry being read at night, to protests, to press conferences, it's a high price to pay. And that means our troop, federal law enforcement officers, air traffic controllers, other essential personnel, families in need that go paycheck to paycheck aren't getting a paycheck. For 6 weeks, Americans, many of whom our lives depend on, have wondered how they're going to pay their bills or keep food on the table for their families. It's ridiculous that because of this ongoing lapse in funding, heroes who protect and defend us are suffering. In fact, I found it incredible and embarrassing that the U.S. Army has published guidance on the IRS website, on their website, directing soldiers in Germany to emergency service benefits, loans, food banks, and food sharing organizations where volunteers provide leftover food through public fridges. These are our soldiers working day in and day out, far away from home, away from their loved ones. Indeed, the oldest boy in our family serves in the Army. And he said he's not worried about himself, but he's worried about his friends that have kids and wonder if they're going to get paid. We have federal law enforcement officers working tirelessly to get deadly drugs out of our communities and take down dangerous gangs like Tren de Aragua, doing it for free without being paid. Because my colleagues are using the American people as political leverage. My Democratic colleagues have voted 14 times to keep our government closed, all while collecting their paychecks. Let me say that again. Our troops, our law enforcement officers, so many essential government employees are still working without pay because the Democrats will not vote to open this government, and my Democratic colleagues are still getting their paychecks. and it's far past time to end this. Maybe if my Democratic colleagues weren't getting paid, or maybe if we posted on the Senate website that they could go to food banks and food sharing organizations and public institutions to get food, they might think twice about voting no on reopening this government. Voting no 14 times just to continue the funding that we spent last year. I've committed to donating my own paycheck during this shutdown to a crisis center back in Florida. And I'm glad to know there are others that have committed to donating their pay during this time to help others. The American people did not send us here to let the government shut down and stop working. And our colleagues that are forcing this upon the American people and on our workers do so against the will of the people, against those that put them in office, against the wishes of even workers' groups that have historically supported Democratic candidates. We were sent here to do important work and govern in good faith on behalf of the people. Americans should be furious at the display of recklessness with their country. I understand the president's frustration. I understand our leaders' frustration. I am livid. I've been here 10 months. It is no wonder people across America hate DC. We have much work to do to make this country stronger and safer. So I urge my colleagues to end this shutdown. Stay here until we get it done. Stay here until we pass the clean continuing resolution so we can continue the people's work. And while we're at it, let's pass legislation to make sure this cannot happen again. We could start with the No Budget, No Pay Act, meaning none of us here in Congress get paid unless we pass a budget and fund the government. That's common sense. Senators and representatives shouldn't be paid until Congress does its base level job. We should also pass legislation to make sure that those in Congress don't leave DC until we deliver and we keep government functioning. That's why I'm co-sponsoring the Eliminate Shutdowns Act and other legislation that would make sure this does not happen again and ensures that our government remains open. And those heroes that put their lives on the line for us get paid. We owe it to the American people to ensure the government remains open, and we should not have another shutdown period. 37 days of chaos, uncertainty, and dysfunction is a disservice to the Americans we are here to represent, and this must end. Government must work for the people. If showboating politicians begin sabotaging the very operation of our government, corrupting rules, warping those rules' intended use to satisfy a subversive agenda, all options need to be on the table. Those options can take many forms, but this cannot continue. And maybe I should put this in terms that even my Democratic colleagues can understand. Maybe the Senate needs to reimagine the filibuster. Let's make Congress work again. And until we can do that, maybe we need to lock Congress in the Capitol until that happens. No bail, no revolving Capitol door. Let's get it done, Mr. President. I yield back.
Mr. President.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are we in a quorum, Mr. President?
We're not.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise today in defense of one of the most sacred pillars of our democracy, the freedom of speech. Last Saturday, President Donald Trump declared on social media that comedian Seth Meyers' jokes about him were, quote, 100% anti-Trump, which is probably illegal. That's right, illegal. The president thinks it's probably illegal to make jokes about him on television. That what Seth Meyers was doing is illegal. No more jokes about the president. Let me be clear. In America, criticizing the president is not a crime. It is a constitutional right. It is a democratic duty. It is essential for a free society. The founders enshrined this principle in the very first words of the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment guarantees that Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press. That protection is not conditional. It's not conditional upon whether or not Donald Trump likes that constitutional protection or not. It is not limited to Americans who praise those in power. It also extends to those who are critical of those who are in power, including the president and including all of the members of the United States Senate, because we have to accept that as part of our job, that people can criticize us. And this right belongs equally to everyone, from your family arguing about politics at Thanksgiving dinner to protesters and late-night comics making fun of the president. Donald Trump seems to have somehow missed this part of the Constitution. He thinks that the First Amendment has a hidden clause that prohibits criticism of him. This Trump exception flips the First Amendment on its head. Rather than protecting the public's right to speak, it protects Trump's right to be free from criticism. That's how kings think. That's not how elected officials in the United States are allowed to think. That they are infallible, that no one can ever criticize them. So that might sound crazy. Could Donald Trump really think criticizing the president is illegal? So just look at his record. Law firms, universities, protesters, journalists, all have faced this administration's wrath for their speech. The message is clear. If you dare to dissent, you have a target on your back. Consider President Trump's repeated attacks on broadcasters. Over and over again, he has urged the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission to revoke broadcasters' licenses for their speech. His allies, including Chairman Brendan Carr, have echoed those threats, even warning ABC and Disney that the FCC could, quote, do this the easy way or the hard way, over the political commentary of late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. Those are not jokes. These are threats. And when government officials use the power of their office to intimidate or silence speech, they assault the very fabric of our democracy. The resolution I bring forward today is simple. It is straightforward. It condemns any suggestion by President Trump or his administration that criticism of him is illegal. It reaffirms that the First Amendment protects the right to speak truth to power, including and especially to the most powerful person in our country. And it urges all Trump administration officials to refrain from using the machinery of government to punish or suppress dissent. This is not about partisanship. It is about principle. Presidents come, presidents go. But the First Amendment must endure. If we allow any president to wield government authority as a cudgel against speech, then no citizen's voice is safe in our nation. Not yours, not mine, not the press, not the public's. No one is safe. So I urge my colleagues to join me in sending a clear and bipartisan message. In the United States of America, it is not illegal to criticize the President of the United States. It is our constitutional right to be able to criticize the President. We have to give our support to our government, to our nation, 100% of our time. But we only have to support elected officials led by the President when they are right. That is what our country is all about. That's why we have a First Amendment. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the consideration of Senate Resolution 486 submitted earlier today, and further that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
Senator from Florida.
reserving the right to object. Mr. President, this is an interesting conversation, but Democrats have had 37 days to stop the most important issue that this Senate should be focused on right now, and that's this shutdown. But they clearly rather spend their time playing politics and attacking the president instead of doing what's best for the American public. Democrats have caused the longest government shutdown in our nation's history. For one reason, they hate our president. They hate him. They don't care that their actions are stopping our troops, Capitol Police, federal law enforcement, air traffic controllers from getting their paychecks. They don't care that they're causing chaos and delays at our airports, or that 42 million people rely on SNAP benefits who can't put food on the table. Now, I think about growing up. I was blessed, had a wonderful mom, but we lived in public housing. I don't know my dad. She really struggled to put food on the table. In my state of Florida and all across the country, we have people worried about putting food on the table right now. Little kids are worried about getting a dinner tonight. And it's because the Democrats have decided to shut down our government. So I represent the people of Florida and Americans across this country who are sick and tired of these political games. What we ought to be doing is feed our families, pay the people that are working their tail off, and open our government. Therefore, I object.
Mr. President.
Objection is heard. Senator from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it is telling that the Republicans have objected with an unrelated bill. This is a classic Republican move. They're scared of supporting anything critical of Donald Trump, but they don't want to defend his actions at the same time. So they object and pivot to an unrelated issue. But don't be fooled. Senate Republicans just blocked a resolution stating that it's not illegal to criticize President Trump. I'm genuinely shocked that we can't agree that the First Amendment protects our right to criticize the president. This is, unfortunately, an era where Donald Trump wants to be king, and too many in the Republican Party are allowing him to believe that that is possible in a democracy with a Constitution and a First Amendment that guarantees the right of free speech and the right of freedom of the press. So with that, Mr. President, I yield back.
Mr. President.
Senator from Florida.
And I'm shocked that my colleague doesn't want to worry about the people, the 42 million people that are not getting SNAP benefits, the Capitol Police that are protecting us that aren't getting paid. These people have mortgages and they ought to get paid. So, Mr. President, I rise today with my bipartisan and common sense no budget, no pay act. It's a simple proposal that says if members of Congress can't complete one of our basic jobs of funding the government, we shouldn't get paid. This shouldn't even be necessary. We should just do our jobs. But as we sit here over a month into the Democrat shutdown, it's clear we need something to hold Congress accountable. Every year we're tasked with putting together a budget with the expectation that it is on time and fits the needs of the American people. The American people elected us to come together. Look at what we're collecting in revenues and put together and pass 12 appropriation bills that use those dollars effectively. I was governor of Florida. Every year we pass a budget and we balance the budget, and we did it on time. The last time Congress passed all 12 appropriation bills on time was, what's your guess? 3 decades ago. Congress has failed time and time again to do its most basic job. I came to the Senate to fix this. I ran on a plan to make Washington work better for families, which included my No Budget, No Pay Act. And I've been fighting to get this passed since I got here in 2019, and I've been met with resistance from many of my colleagues since I got up here. But unfortunately, Democrats have thrived in the dysfunction and have fought endlessly to keep the status quo. They passed massive spending bills after massive spending bill, which has caused massive inflation in this country. They've raised taxes and expanded government. We have now have, Mr. President, how much debt do you think we have now? $38 trillion. We're running $2 trillion a year deficits. Now they're using the same dysfunction to shut down our government. They're prioritizing a liberal wish list of the needs of the American people. And they're more than happy, it seems, to deprive federal workers, TSA, FAA, and law enforcement of their paychecks, while members of Congress still get their own paychecks. Democrats are happy to stop 40 million people from getting their SNAP benefits. I just can't imagine, little kids worried about where their meals are going to come tonight. These Democrats voting to shut down government are still getting paid. We should not get paid if we don't do our job. There's a problem with Washington. Any working American will tell you that if you don't do your job, you don't get paid, except here. Members of Congress consistently fail one of our basic duties of funding the government on time and still get a paycheck, even when others don't. Senate Democrats have now voted against funding the government 14 times in the last 5 weeks. They voted time and time again to continue the longest shutdown in our nation's history and stopping people from getting paid. But they're still getting paid. Democrats shouldn't be shutting down the government and risking others' paychecks without being in the same boat. I ask every one of my colleagues to support passage of my No Budget, No Pay to tell every member, do your job, fund the government, or do what other people end up doing, forego your taxpayer-funded salary. I ask unanimous consent that the Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs be discharged from further consideration of S-88 and the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. I further ask that the bill be considered, read a third time and passed, that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
President, I reserve the right to object.
Senator from Massachusetts.
And I agree with my colleague, for sure, that during a government shutdown, lawmakers should not be paid. And that's why I'm having my pay deferred during this period. But the real answer to this shutdown isn't to withhold pay from lawmakers. It's for Republicans to stop holding the health care of Americans hostage for millions of Americans, including 337,000 people in my home state. It's for the House Republicans to return here to Washington. They're in a political witness protection program right now, back in their home states. They should come here and negotiate on these issues. We're seeing the consequences of this Republican shutdown every day: reduced SNAP benefits, canceled flights, rising health care costs. So enough already. Let's sit down. We can open the government and protect the health care of all Americans with one vote on the floor. So my Republican colleagues, they're kind of twisting themselves into knots, trying to use the shutdown to block my free speech resolution. That is ridiculous. We should have the vote on free speech. And because of that, Mr. President, I object.
Objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from Florida.
I want to commend my colleague for deferring his paycheck. I think it's the right thing to do. If he's willing to defer his paycheck, why wouldn't he allow my bill to pass that all of us should defer our paychecks until government gets open again? The right thing to do is open the government and figure out how do we improve our healthcare system. Our healthcare system is out of control. The costs are out of control. Obamacare has completely failed us. Remember when Obamacare was passed? President Biden said, oh, you won't lose your doctor. Biggest lie of the year. Oh, gosh, you're not going to lose your plan. You completely lost your plan. Oh, you're going to save $2,500 a family. No, your costs have skyrocketed. Your co-payments are up. Your deductibles are up. Your premiums have skyrocketed. And so what we've got to do is we need to sit down in a bipartisan manner and say, how do we actually fix the cost of health care. You don't do it by shutting down government and making sure our military doesn't get paid, our TSA doesn't get paid, our FAA doesn't get paid, our Capitol Police doesn't get paid, all of our federal workers don't get paid, and we prevent 42 million people from getting food stamps benefits. If we want to fix health care, which we should do on a bipartisan matter, we should sit down and do that once we open the federal government. So I'm disappointed that my colleague, I commend him for deferring his paycheck. It's the right thing to do, but we should do that for every member of Congress until we open our government. Thank you, Mr. President.